Information shared on the following program is for general information purposes only. It does not constitute legal, tax, investment, or other advice, nor is it intended to recommend any particular investments, products, or financial instruments. Always seek advice from your financial advisor, attorney, or accountant with regard to investment, legal, or tax questions.
Welcome to the only show in the country dedicated to helping savers worry less about money, the Worry-Free Retirement, with your host, nationally recognized retirement specialist and six-time author and fiduciary, Tony Walker.
Well, welcome, folks, to the Worry-Free Retirement. And yes, I am that little man in the sweater vest, retirement planning specialist and fiduciary, Tony Walker, and today we will jump right into part 2 of our show. It's not a matter of if, but when. But before we get into the meat of our show, let me introduce to you two folks in our Worry-Free studios who know when to turn on the lights and cameras in this place each week. America's favorite financial sidekick, Mr. Aaron Orander, and Louisville, Kentucky's most laid-back graphics artist, Mr. Derek Hudson. Okay, to summarize where we are with this topic of it's not a matter of if but when, let's take a look at the most frequent ifs but whens that I see on a regular basis as I meet with hundreds of savers each year. Of course, as we talked about last week, when to take Social Security and when to roll over your 401k were discussed in detail. Now today we plan on covering 2 more. Number 3, when to deal with that dreaded tax tumor that's buried inside your 401k. And of course, we're going to talk about when to start taking less risk with your money. So let's jump right into something I referred to as the tax tumor. What is a tax tumor and who is affected by it? Well, quite frankly, if you have in your current possession a 401k, a 403b, an IRA, a lump sum pension, and even a TSP, or what we call a thrift savings plan, you have a tax tumor. And unlike the humanly tumors we might get, there's an even bigger problem with this tax tumor, and it is this. Whereas the tumors our bodies might have to endure, they will go away when we die, and unfortunately the tax tumor does not. In fact, as you'll soon learn, without a treatment plan provided by a trained retirement specialist, such as Tony Walker Financial, not only will your tax tumor grow over time, but when you die, the tumor will be passed off to the kids where they'll have to deal with it. In other words, the tax tumor really never goes away if left untreated. In fact, if you're going to ignore it, the tax tumor can invade more and more of your retirement savings, leaving you and your family less and less money. So how do we at Tony Walker Financial help savers deal with this darn tax tumor? Well, let's take a look at this right now. As you can see in this example, someone is starting out years ago at $200,000. It could be right now, quite frankly, assuming you're going to let that thing grow. We got to imagine that in this example, based on these tax brackets, which are subject to change, you're going to owe $58,000 on that $200,000 if you were to take the money out. But since you don't want to pay the taxes and you don't need the money and you forget that this tax tumor is buried inside the plan, you let it grow. And on paper, everything looks great. In fact, in 30 years, you now have on paper $864,000. But here's the problem, and especially as we record this show on January 4th, 2023, and people losing a lot of money last year, you could have lost this on paper, and here's the problem. But the tax tumor still does not go away. So in this example, again, assuming tax rates don't go up in the future, really the $864 you have, really you only have about $600 and some odd thousand, less any losses in the stock market because you haven't dealt with the tax tumor. So how exactly do we deal with the tax tumor for our saver clients at Tony Walker Financial? Good stuff coming your way. The 2 key components of our process that are unique to the planning industry. I'm Tony Walker. Stay tuned. We'll be right back.
With the uncertainty of the stock market, our nation's debt spiraling out of control, and inflation running rampant, now may be the best time to consider moving your 401k to safer territory. My name is Tony Walker, and for over 38 years I've made it my life's mission to help savers worry less about money, and I want to help you too. To speak with me at no cost or obligation, why don't you log on to TonyWalkerFinancial.com or simply call the toll-free number on your screen.
Wondering how much money you'll need to retire? Probably a lot less than you think. I'm retirement specialist Tony Walker, and for the past 36 years, I've helped thousands of savers determine when to retire and how much money they'll need in retirement, and I can help you too. To meet in person at no cost or obligation, let me invite you to log on right now to TonyWalkerFinancial.com or call the toll-free number on your screen. We look forward to talking with you soon. Some 30 years ago, I began my quest for educating savers about money with my first TV show back in the 90s called Your Money Matters. And of course, since that time, I've always relied on what we call traditional media to get the word out and to help all these savers worry less about money. Well, guess what? This old boy's finally trying to get in the 21st century as we now get into our brand new social media campaign, and it's going to be spearheaded by none other than my favorite daughter, Miss Lacey Juergens, who just happens to be married to my favorite son-in-law, Trey. So, to give us an update on how she's doing while working closely with our WorryFree Productions crew, right in the studios, I've got Mr. Aaron Orander and Mr. Derek Hudson. Guys, how y'all doing? And first of all, Aaron, how's Lacey making the grade? Everything going well?
I think she's doing great. I'm happy to have her on. I'm excited to see where this is going to go.
Well, thank you, Aaron. And then Derek, explain your role briefly in terms of what you're providing Lacey that then she's going to take and share with the general public.
Yeah, I'm mostly just getting some graphics together for her, stuff that we've used before, some old videos, and getting them social media ready, and then I send them to her, and she does all the rest.
Okay, good deal. Well, we appreciate your work so much. So, Aaron, tell people how they can start following us now on social media.
Sure, folks, it's really easy to do. All you got to do is get online, and if you want to follow us on Facebook, right here, go to Facebook.com, and right there, look for the WorryFree Retirement. 3 words, the space, worry-free space, retirement, okay? You're gonna see Tony's smiling face right there. Just become friends with us. We'd love to have you on. Now, if you wanna jump on over to Instagram, that's instagram.com, okay? And in that search bar, you're gonna type the @ at the WorryFree Retirement. Now, that's all one word. That's all one word, at the WorryFree Retirement, okay?
All right, thanks, guys. Really appreciate it. Okay, back to our subject matter. How do we at Tony Walker Financial deal with this darn tax tumor? Well, there are 2 main ways that we at Tony Walker Financial work to constantly make sure that Uncle Sam does not get more than his fair share of your retirement money. First, it's something dealing with what we call tax bracket creep. You see, folks, when you start taking out money out of these tax-infested 401k or IRA plans, if you're not careful, what can happen is your income, as it comes out, remember all of this stuff is taxable, can throw you into a higher tax bracket. So, and there's a big difference here. Imagine if we can try to keep your tax bracket at 12%. So let's say we have $100,000 of taxable income coming out of the IRA or 401k. That means you're going to owe $12,000 in federal taxes. But through whatever reason, if we go way up this scale, and remember this includes your standard deduction, which we can calculate all this in our offices for you. But let's say you take out $200,000 or $300,000. Now all of a sudden you're creeping up into the 24 or even 32% bracket. That $200,000, let's say it's at 32%, you're going to have to pay $65,000, $70,000 in taxes.
That's too bad.
But it's not just the tax tumor, folks. Because what we did, we had to deal with the tax tumor in terms of its income and also something we call the split IRA process. It's a concept I created that couples both investments through Charles Schwab, which we'll be talking about in just a minute with my favorite nephew, Wes Walker, and also the guarantees offered by annuities. So here is the key with this, folks. You can't just throw all of your money in one bucket. You have to divide this up and have a retirement planning firm that knows when to take the money out of which bucket and how much, and hopefully keep those tax brackets low. Now, by the way, it's not just taxes. Let me throw this in real quick, Derek. We created this. This is pretty cool. We've been talking a lot about saving on fees. which is another emphasis of Tony Walker Financial, trying to keep your fees down. We talked about this graphic last week, and in this example, how we were going to save someone over $220,000 in fees over their lifetime through our Charles Schwab platform. Well, guess what? It gets even better. This came in from a Tony in the Trenches. It was a young man who said he wanted to have the following goals. So let's go over these. So I asked this person who was age 30 what your goal was, and the gentleman said, I want $1 million at 65. Of course, he didn't know the fees, and so we're going to assume over here he was going to have to pay 1% in fees for somebody to manage this thing all these years. We assumed a 5% growth rate, and I said, hey, what if in a perfect world we had no fees? How much would you have to contribute each year into the 401k for this 35-year period to arrive at $1 million? So Derek, let's fill that in. This person would have to put in $10,544 a year. But because of the fees, how much more would this person have to put in to reach the million? $13,000. Folks, this is a huge sum of money because over your lifetime, this would be another $92,000 that you might have wasted in fees. So here's what I'd like you to do right now. Log on to TonyWalkerFinancial.com, click on that Let's Get Started button, or if you like, you can give me a call. It's something called the free 10-minute fiduciary phone call, where we will talk to you about your situation, and of course, if it warrants, be happy to meet with you in person at either our Bowling Green, Louisville, or Lexington, Kentucky offices. All right, my favorite nephew, Wes Walker, is going to come in to talk about when to start taking less risk with your retirement money. You stay tuned. I'm Tony Walker. I'll be right back.
Have you recently retired, been laid off, or offered a pension buyout? Has the company you work for moved, been acquired, or closed its doors forever? And finally, do you have a 401k with a previous employer you'd like to move to safer territory? Then take advantage of this opportunity to move your 401k or lump sum pension to Tony Walker Financial. Let's meet in person to discuss your retirement options. Log on now to TonyWalkerFinancial.com to schedule your free, no obligation appointment. Let us help you today.
Hi, my name is Shannon, and I'm in charge of setting up all of Tony's appointments with clients and prospective clients. One of the things we take great pride in is making sure that phone calls are returned promptly and that the needs of our clients are met right away. When you call Tony Walker Financial, you'll always get a live agent, and in most cases, your questions can be answered by one of our trained retirement planning specialists immediately.
You wouldn't go through major surgery without getting a second opinion, would you? Well, of course not. And neither should you blindly trust your life savings to the first advisor you meet. I'm retirement specialist Tony Walker, and for more than 37 years I've been providing free second opinions, and I'd like to do the same for you. To get your free second opinion, log on to TonyWalkerFinancial.com. That's TonyWalkerFinancial.com, or call the toll-free number on your screen.
Welcome back to the Worry-Free Retirement. In case you're just now joining us and you missed the last segment on the tax tumor, you might want to download this handy dandy booklet. It's called 401k Rollovers Made Easy, and it'll explain how Tony Walker Financial can help you deal with your tax tumor. Okay, we're on to number 4, and that's when to start taking less risk with your 401k. And in the studios to help us understand this topic is none other than my favorite nephew, fellow fiduciary, Mr. Wes Walker. Thank you for joining us, Wes.
Thanks for having me, Tony.
Well, you're welcome. So let's jump right into it here. So the problem is articles like this are very confusing. People are getting near retirement. The Wall Street knows this. They're trying to change the narrative a little bit. I think they want people to feel like they're going to be more conservative, but that is not always the case. And we find that sometimes people are still, in our opinion, taking way too much risk. So first of all, what in the heck is glide path? I've been doing this 38 years. I've never even heard this term.
Yeah. Well, recently got done with this designation, the RICP. It's through the American College, and this is the focus of a lot of the content.
Okay.
So really, it's just a new word for an old concept. It used to be called the rule of 100, even the rule of 120. It's just this idea that as you get older, as you approach retirement and you get into retirement, you're going to shift your allocation from a majority of stocks to a majority of bonds. As you grow older, because there's less risk, basically in bonds than stocks.
And I mean, yeah, that philosophy has been around for years. I just didn't know the glide path. So, okay, that's interesting. So let's kind of take this, though, to its logical conclusion, because 2022, as we record this show on January 4th, 2023, I realized was an anomaly. Both stocks and bonds went down. So let's kind of take a look at their answer, which I understand is something called the target date fund. Let's explain these two options available to savers.
Sure. So the glide path, ultimately Wall Street's answer to this problem was a product. They came out with something called a target date fund that employs this glide path theory. What a target date fund does is the same concept. As you grow older and you reach your target date, you will shift from a majority of stocks to a majority of bonds. In this case, we've modeled one target date fund. This is the Vanguard 2020 target date fund. So this is assuming you would be retired or at least close to retirement in the year 2020.
Well, let me stop you there. So it's the year 2023. So I've got to believe this thing has got to be pretty conservative, should not lose much money, I'm assuming. But let's go on.
Right. So let's say somebody called their plan administrator, maybe they're nearing retirement, and they told them, hey, I'd like to be in the least aggressive funds that you can put me in. This very well might be an option that the plan administrator would present to them. So,
makes sense, yeah.
Okay, so let's say they've put the $500,000 that was in their 401k, and that's what we're starting out with, into this. Well, over that year period, again, we're invested in stocks and bonds here, both went down, and over
this was last year. This was 2022.
That's too bad.
This is January 1 of 2022 to December 31st. This is last year. It's down 18.19%.
Well, let's see the effects of that on your account. Oh my gosh, look at that, Wes.
Yeah, so in this fund, we put the $500,000 in January 1st, let's just say, of 2022. At the end of the year, this is the sum you're left with, $409,050.
Golly.
But there is an alternative.
Yeah, so this is my favorite alternative. Let's go through the split IRA and explain to the folks how this works.
Okay, so this introduces a third component rather than just stocks and bonds. It introduces the use of annuities into the asset mix. So in this case, we've got our mailbox money account, and we'll go back to the example, but $300,000 went there. And on the other side, we've got our Charles Schwab platform, $200,000 to that account. And the uses of these, this is for future mailbox money, safe accumulation. This part is for potential growth and immediate income.
Okay, don't do anything. Derek's over at the helm doing a great job on graphics. So this is totally protected, not subject to stock market risk, not subject to interest rate risk. It's not really in bonds per se, so not subject to bond risk. But the Charles Schwab is. So let's take a look at what happened to these two buckets last year.
Correct. So we've started with our $300,000 in the mailbox money account. That's your annuities. And then we had $200,000 in Schwab. The annuities remain unchanged. Even if the market goes down, zero's your hero, you don't lose anything. The Charles Schwab platform, on the other hand, did take some losses. We've modeled our moderate strategy here. But again, since there was less of your assets going into this bucket, there's less of a loss. So in conclusion, with these two examples, with option A, at your plan administrator requesting a safe target date fund, we had started off with $500,000. Again, we end with $409.50. Option B is the split IRA concept with Tony Walker Financial, where we've put $300,000 to annuities, $200,000 in Charles Schwab. The Charles Schwab did take losses, but again, since you weren't exposed so much to the stock and bond market, those losses are limited to $481,420 as your final balance.
And I don't want to get into bonuses too much, but we do have several annuities that offer bonuses. So folks, that's one of those things too. Maybe you've got some losses in your accounts. You're thinking about wanting to move it over, your 401k, IRAs, whatever, to Tony Walker Financial. There are some stipulations with these bonuses, but there is a way on paper to get some of this money back that you've lost. So bonuses do have their place in the split IRA at times, don't they?
Sure. Yeah, they're sold in a different manner. You would think if you're talking to somebody who sells bonuses a lot, you could take all that money out at once. That's not really how it works, but on paper, you can recoup losses through the purchase of annuities with bonuses.
Yeah, you mentioned that. One of our episodes coming up pretty soon is when to purchase an annuity. And you're right, boy, some of these, I call them annuity peddlers, quite frankly. They're not telling the whole story on these bonuses. While the bonuses are important and can help make up losses on paper, you're right, though, boy, they're being oversold. And I think a lot of people have no clue how these bonuses work and how much they're going to be charged if they try to get out of these contracts.
I'd agree.
So, Wes, really good stuff. Appreciate your time today. Appreciate so much your help in the Schwab department, and you make it a good day.
Will do. Thanks.
You're welcome. Well, folks, I'm Tony Walker, the owner of Tony Walker Financial, inviting you to take control of your money. Why don't you do this right now? If you'd like to talk to us about your situation, maybe you've got a 401k, a 403b, thrift savings account, maybe even a lump sum pension you need to deal with, especially if you know you've got a tax tumor buried in that thing. We want to be here to be of service. So do this. Log on to TonyWalkerFinancial.com. You're going to want to click on the Let's Get Started button, or of course, you can just simply call the number on your screen. Well, what does the Bible have to say about this whole thing of being patient during turbulent times? Some good stuff coming your way. You're watching the Worry-Free Retirement. I'll be right back.
Tony, I've been in this situation where I left an employer and I had a 401k kind of hanging out there. And then other people who retire and they don't really know what to do with their 401k. What is the benefit of rolling that money over to Tony Walker Financial?
That's a good question. First of all, a 401k is a savings plan, but it's not a plan. It's not really anything that's managed. You have to pick your own investments. And what I've found, Diane, is when people leave an employer, even if they're 40 or 45 years of age, it's always advantageous to put that with an independent financial advisor. Number one, we can get certain products that usually the 401k does not offer. The second advantage of that is now we can devise a plan. You have a local retirement firm that's actually watching over it. You're not dialing a 1-800 number or getting online and looking at something that looks like a financial sushi menu. So this allows us to manage the money, properly position it, and also as someone gets a little older, we had a person in the office today, now they're getting ready to retire. And it's interesting, we moved that money over from a former 401k 10 years ago. We already kind of have the plan, and they are so comfortable retiring and now moving the balance of their new 401k over to us.
That's interesting. What if I'm still working for an employer? Can I move that 401k to you, or do I have to quit?
Yeah, that's really a good point. So if someone is over the age of 59 and a half, this is a government age, I don't know where they came up with this, but basically, and let's say you're still working, but you say, Tony, I want my 401k with you. I want a plan around this, but I still want to contribute to my 401k. Can I do that? Surprisingly, usually you can. So let's take an example. Someone's 60 years of age, they're still working, they're funding a 401k. They could roll over their current 401k to us, no charge, no taxes, we'll manage it, and then still contribute to their 401k. So it's a win-win for everyone.
For additional information and scheduling your free, no obligation appointment, go to TonyWalkerFinancial.com.
Who can you trust? It's one of the most important decisions you'll have to make. Question is, are you ready? Well, we're here to help at Tony Walker Financial. You know, we care more about you than we do your money, and we have over 2,000 happy clients and an A+ rating with the Better Business Bureau to prove it. Rolling over a 401k, confused about Social Security, maybe you're afraid of running out of money. Learn how to use and enjoy and protect your hard-earned money. Log on now to TonyWalkerFinancial.com and let's get started. Our theme these past few weeks has been, it's not a matter of if, but when. And nowhere is this if, not, but when matter of living life more evident than when we encounter struggles and problems that stop us dead in our tracks, and usually at a time we least expect them. Last week we discussed the plight of a godly man in the Bible by the name of Job, a man who had it all, yet through no fault of his own, lost it all, as God gave permission for the devil to sift Job like wheat, leading Job into utter despair and hopelessness. Which one might rightly ask, why would God do such a thing? The answer, to test Job's faith. We learn Job will need 3 attributes to maintain his faith in God during these difficult times: patience, confidence, and remaining of good cheer. Sounds difficult to me, especially that part about remaining cheerful while going through extreme trials and tribulations. Recently, a dear friend of mine, 15 years my senior by the way, was lamenting the fact that in the past 12 months, his wife of 50+ years had passed away, as well as 6 very close friends. I asked how his faith was holding up during this difficult time of losing so many folks in his life, to which he responded, all I know to do is trust in God and follow the 3 P's of faith. Since I'd never heard of the 3 P's of faith, I asked him, and here was his response. The first P stands for promise, meaning that faith always starts with a promise from God. But then something strange happens after we receive his promise. a problem arises to challenge God's promise. Yet, since we know that God is not a God of empty promises, we then must lean on Him for something called a provision. So, what is a provision? Well, Webster's defines provision as the act or process of providing what's needed at the very time it is needed. A provision is a stock of needed materials for future use. For instance, ever since the pandemic, me and Susan have stocked up on toilet paper because, as we learned over the past 2 years, it is the one provision you're always going to need. A provision of something assumes that you will one day need the provision. So back to the 3 P's of faith, let's turn to 1 Peter 1:6, where we are told that during times of great trials and tribulations, we are to rejoice. In other words, there's that being of good cheer we talked about earlier. So how can we remain of good cheer during trials? Well, look at verse 7. So that the proof of your faith, which by the way, your faith is more precious than gold, may be found to result in praise and glory and honor at the revelation of Christ. So as we cling to this promise of faith, we are reminded in Job 2:10 that God is both the author of the promise and allower of the problem. Why? Well, it appears God allows the problems to come so that our faith in Him can be strengthened as we wait on God's provision. And assuming you're struggling right now with the worries of the world and feel as though the faith in God is wearing thin, might I suggest you go back to the 3 P's of faith to be reminded that God described in the Bible that we're talking about will never leave you nor forsake you. And that, my friend, is a promise you and I can take to the bank. Well, speaking of promises, problems, and provisions, I've got a question for you when it comes to your money and retirement. Who in your financial world has the ability to keep their promises, help you deal with any financial problems that might come along during retirement, and finally, has the experience and know-how to give you the provisions that you need to remain worry-free? Well, assuming you're like most of the savers I meet on a daily basis, you probably don't have an advisor that fits this bill. If that's the case, might I suggest that you and I talk, even if it's just over the phone, something we call the free 10-minute fiduciary phone call. That's right. No matter your situation, you can take advantage of this free offer to talk with me on the phone, the owner of the company with more than 38 years of experience, a person who has met in person with over 15,000 savers. That's right. I would love to talk to you about your situation. And assuming we can help, here's the next step. I will then personally meet with you at either our Bowling Green, Louisville, or Lexington, Kentucky offices. That's right, at no charge, no obligation. So to take advantage of this free offer, why don't you do this right now? Log on to TonyWalkerFinancial.com or simply call the number on your screen. Well, that's all the time we have for today, but between now and next week, you remember, if all else fails, you be worry-free. Make it a good one.